Make no mistake, you are a 33-year-old young lady and put her in a shallow grave. We're going to seek.
This is very frightening that I was following this story since it happened, and for the finish line to be, just right here in my front door, it's very frightening, and it's just seemed unreal right now.
Last night, a body was found that could solve the mystery of a missing woman from McKinney.
Kelly and Ferguson were dating, but he gave her a fake name and told her he wasn't married. She'd only recently learned he was.
In the early hours of January 11, 2023, 32-year-old Kayla vanished without a trace after driving her boyfriend to his home in Grand Prairie, Texas. Kaylee had found out a secret her boyfriend was hiding. What she didn't know was her plan to expose him awakened the monster behind his mask and set something evil into motion. It wasn't until her car was found abandoned in a remote area of Frisco, Texas, badly burned beyond recognition. As investigators searched for answers, the horrifying truth emerged. She was burned to death by a married man after posting their secret. And in a painful reminder, her case reflects another we've already brought to light. Remember Jasmine Dunbar, who was burnt to death by her boyfriend immediately after exposing her baby's DNA test results? If you missed that one, I'll leave the link for you at the end of this video. This is the life and death Kayla Kelly.
If I can't love myself enough to know when it's time to let go. Sing.
33-year-old Kayla Kelly was born in 1989 and raised in Huntsville, Alabama. From an early age, life was difficult. Her parents battled drug addiction and eventually, they lost custody of her. Kayla was placed in the care of her aunt and uncle who stepped in to provide the stability she desperately needed, determined not to be defined by her past. Kayla set out to rewrite her story, chasing a future filled with purpose, independence, and hope. Graduating from Charles Henderson High School in 2007, she went on to earn a bachelor's degree in management information systems, graduating with honors from Athens State University in 2013. Kayla then pursued not one, but 2 master's degrees in Florida, completing both an MIS degree in 2015 and an MBA with a focus on project management in 2020. But degrees weren't enough. In 2021, Kayla moved to McKinney, Texas to make a fresh start. She took on a new role as a project manager at a local facility. She settled into a cozy home with her beloved dog, Chili, who quickly became her constant companion.
What are you doing? Chili. 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 Look at me, Chili. 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 What are you doing?
Friends remember Kayla as someone full of energy and style. She loved weekend shopping trips, decorating her space, and speaking her mind without hesitation. She was clear about what she wanted in life: a husband, a family, and a home built on love, stability, and everything she hadn't had growing up. But everything changed in the summer of 2022, when she met a man online by the name Kevin Brown. Kevin was 32 years old at the time, and in the beginning, their relationship showed promise. He came across as charming, attentive, and emotionally available, the kind of man Kayla had been hoping for. He listened to her dreams, made her laugh, and for a while, it felt like something real was taking shape. But there was a problem. Kevin never carried any means of identification. Not only that, he also never used cards, only cash. He rarely shared personal details. But what was worse was that he'd disappear for days at a time, then reappear with smooth excuses and vague explanations. At first, Kayla tried to be understanding, thinking maybe he just valued his privacy, but over time, the gaps in his stories grew wider. He dodged simple questions about where he worked, where he lived. When she pressed for answers, he'd get defensive or change the subject. His behavior became harder to ignore. Friends later said Kayla started to feel uneasy, but nothing could have prepared her for the truth. What Kayla didn't know was that Kevin was living a double life. He wasn't just hiding personal details, he was hiding something even more wicked, and his entire relationship with her had been built on a lie. One night in January 2023, Kayla waited until Kevin was asleep, then quietly picked up his phone. What she found shattered everything. Kevin wasn't who he claimed to be. His real name was Ocastor Ferguson. He had been using a fake identity for their entire relationship. But that wasn't the worst of it. Kayla discovered he was married. She read phone messages between him and his wife, along with conversations with multiple other women, whom he was also having an affair with. She was heartbroken, but most of all disappointed at herself for not catching on quickly. At that point, Kayla could have chosen to walk away quietly, to grieve and protect her peace, but that wasn't her style. Instead, she took a stand. She sent messages not only to his wife, but to the other women as well. She wasn't just exposing the lies, she was sending a warning. Kayla was hurt and angry, but rather than disappear, she decided to confront the man who had turned her life into a lie, and that decision would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. That very night, as Kayla and Ocastor drove together, she told him everything. How she had gone through his phone, uncovered his real identity, and sent messages to his wife and the other women. She had exposed the lies, and now he knew it. Within minutes, the tension in the car exploded. Ocastor pulled over in a deserted area near his home in Grand Prairie. What happened next was sudden and brutal. Without a word of warning, he turned on her. He lunged forward and began choking her with terrifying force. Trapped inside the vehicle, Kayla had nowhere to run, nowhere to call for help. She fought back, but the space was too small, and she was no match for his strength. Within seconds, the fight left her body. What came next would horrify investigators. Ocastor didn't leave Kayla behind. After killing her, he placed her lifeless body in the backseat of his car and drove a short distance into the nearby woods. There, under the cover of darkness, he dug a shallow grave and buried her face down in the cold earth. He stripped her of her clothes, took her phone, and tried to erase any trace of what he had done. But he wasn't finished, not yet. Then, as if it were just another errand, he drove to a nearby Walmart. Surveillance footage would later show him walking the aisles, buying gasoline and lighter tools. That same evening, Ocastor returned to the shallow grave, not out of remorse, but to make sure nothing, not even a phone signal, could lead investigators to him. He double-checked that Kayla's phone was buried deep enough, hoping to avoid any digital trail. But hiding the evidence wasn't enough. In a twisted attempt to cover his tracks, he sent a message to her phone, pretending to be a worried boyfriend. "Baby, where are you?" As if that wasn't dark enough, what came next was even more calculated. After that, he took her car and drove it to Frisco. Once there, he parked it in a remote spot, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire, destroying the vehicle and any lingering evidence. Surveillance cameras nearby later captured the flames lighting up the night, revealing the moment the cover-up began. Meanwhile, unanswered calls and texts were setting off quiet panic. Kayla's family hadn't heard from her in 2 days, and that silence set off an immediate alarm. She was never the type to ignore calls or messages, not even for a few hours. Something felt off. On January 11th, they officially reported her missing. Within 48 hours, Collin County deputies carried out a welfare check at her home. The apartment was quiet. There were no signs of Kayla, only her dog Chili, who had been left behind without food or care. Kayla would not leave Chili alone for a long period of time. Not like that. Something had gone terribly wrong. It didn't take long for investigators to spot Ocastor's vehicle parked outside Kayla's apartment. A search of his car revealed disturbing items: duct tape, gloves, a blanket, and tools that hinted at something suspicious. Detectives secured search warrants and began analyzing phone records and location data. They confirmed that Kayla had texted Ocastor's wife using his real name. Her phone had last pinged near his workplace the afternoon she disappeared. But then, another clue emerged. On January 12th, Police discovered Kayla's car burned and abandoned in Frisco, Texas. The fire had destroyed much of the evidence, but it only raised the urgency of the case.
This is an ongoing homicide investigation, so there are many aspects of the case that we're not ready to disclose at this time.
6 days later, on January 18th, the search came to a heartbreaking end. Kayla's body was found in a forested lot less than a mile from Ocastor's home. Buried in a shallow grave, Kayla's life had been stolen far too soon, an ending as brutal as it was senseless.
Late last night, a body was found that could solve the mystery of a missing woman from McKinney. Kennedy Walker joins us live now from the scene. Kennedy, what's the latest?
Hey, good morning, Keith. It has been 1 day since police found a body here in Grand Prairie, and sources indicate that that may be the body of missing 33-year-old Kayla Kelly. This morning, I did reach out to the Grand Prairie Police Department to confirm whether or not it is Kelly, but have not heard back. But this is what we know. The location where police found the body is just a mile away from Oscar Ferguson's home, the man accused of kidnapping her. Overnight, a possible lead in the missing Kayla Kelly case. Police say a woman's body was found in Grand Prairie, and there's a possibility it could be Kelly. The 33-year-old woman went missing last week after investigators say she was last seen with her boyfriend, Oscar Ferguson. According to arrest records, Ferguson lied about his name and marital status when the two met online, and when Kelly found out, she threatened to expose the relationship to his wife. Days after she went missing, police found duct tape, gloves, and a blanket in Ferguson's car. A woman's body was found less than a mile away from Ferguson's home near the southeast corner of 360 and I-20 in Grand Prairie, and police are working to identify her. Oscar Ferguson is in jail right now, and he has been charged with Kelly's kidnapping. Now, if that body turns out to be Kayla Kelly, then it's possible that he could be charged with capital. Reporting in Grand Prairie, Kennedy Walker, CBS 11 News.
On January 14th, Ocastor was arrested on charges of kidnapping and arson. It didn't take long for murder charges to follow. Cell phone records placed him at every critical location: near Kayla's shallow grave, at the scene where her car was burned, and in the vicinity during the time of her disappearance. Surveillance footage further sealed the case, showing him purchasing a gas can and using Kayla's phone to send deceptive messages in an attempt to cover his tracks. At that moment, investigators had all the evidence they needed. This wasn't a missing persons case. It was a calculated murder, planned and executed with cold precision. The investigation shifted into overdrive. As more details surfaced, detectives began piecing together a chilling timeline. In early January 2023, Kayla uncovered Ocastor's true identity and threatened to expose him to his wife. That same night, he lured her into his car under the guise of a conversation, but instead of talking, he attacked, strangling her to death, transporting her body to a wooded area, and burying her in a shallow grave. Then he set her car on fire to destroy evidence and use her phone to send misleading messages, hoping to buy himself time and delay suspicion. But the truth couldn't stay buried. Ocastor's initial charges of kidnapping and arson quickly escalated. Within days, he was formally charged with first-degree murder.
The man arrested for the kidnapping and killing of a McKinney woman is now charged with her. New court documents reveal the trail of breadcrumbs investigators followed that put Ocastor Ferguson at the center of their investigation into Kayla Kelly's disappearance.
He was held on a $1 million bond, but the case would not stay quiet for long. As the courtroom proceedings began, opening statements launched a trial that brought every horrifying detail into the spotlight. Medical examiner reports confirmed Kayla had died from asphyxia, likely strangulation. Prosecutor Greg Willis walked jurors through the mountain of evidence, damning mobile data, chilling surveillance footage, and text messages that tied Ocastor directly to the crime scene and to Kayla's phone, even after her death. But the most shocking part came when Ocastor took the stand. During the punishment phase, Ocastor took the stand and offered a drastically different version of events. He claimed that the last time he saw Kayla was January 10, They had an argument, and after the argument, he dropped her off at her apartment and never saw her again. But prosecutors dismantled his story with cold, digital facts. Tracking data placed him at the forested burial site, and texts sent from Kayla's phone at that location proved he hadn't walked away, he had stayed, and he had lied. One of the most incriminating moments came when jurors were shown footage of Acostor's text message to Kayla, a message he sent hours after Kayla was already gone. It wasn't a concern. It was a calculated attempt to create confusion, but in the end, that very message helped seal his fate. Meanwhile, a surprising witness took the stand. Acostor's wife, Latrina, took the stand as a defense witness. She recounted meeting him in Jamaica back in 2010 and eventually marrying him in 2018. Her testimony confirmed what many suspected. Infidelity had long been a problem in their relationship. She admitted that when other women showed up at her house, she sometimes made Acostor sleep in the car. But her words did little to soften the damage. Prosecutor Greg Willis seized the opportunity to drive the point home. This wasn't a case of infidelity. It was a pattern of deception, manipulation, and concealment. The same behavior that Latrina described in their marriage had shown up in Acostor's actions with Kayla, in his messages, and even in his testimony. His lies were not an accident. They were parts of who he was. Then came the verdict. On January 23, 2024, after just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict of guilty on all counts, including murder and related charges. The evidence had been overwhelming. Defense attorney Bubba King didn't push back. He acknowledged that the weight of the cell phone data, surveillance footage, and damning text messages left no room for a third-party theory. The narrative simply couldn't hold. Prosecutor Greg Willis summed it up plainly, saying, Acostor had lied from beginning to end, and in the end, his web of deceit cost Kayla her life. Justice at last had been served. But justice wasn't finished. Sentencing was still to come. On May 23, 2024, the judge handed down the final sentence. 32-year-old Acostor Ferguson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no second chances, no appeals for freedom. That same afternoon, Acostor was led out of the courtroom in shackles, his fate sealed. He would never see the outside world again. But even as justice was served, grief reverberated far beyond the courtroom walls. Kayla's loved ones, family, friends, and co-workers mourned the loss of a woman who rose above her past, who worked hard to build a stable life, and who dreamt of a family she never got to have. Her funeral, held in McKinney, was a quiet mix of sorrow and remembrance. Co-workers, friends, and family spoke of Kayla's resilience, how she rose above a challenging childhood, pursued higher education, excelled in her career, and dreamt of becoming a wife and mother. In the weeks that followed, friends and community members visited the location where Kayla's burned car was found, leaving flowers and candles in tribute, a quiet gesture to ensure she would not be forgotten. Her story highlighted a painful reality. Emotional desperation for love and security can make people vulnerable to manipulation, but it also offered a critical warning. Verify identities, protect your personal boundaries, and know the warning signs of abusive control. Kayla Kelly was a survivor who beat the odds, an honors graduate, a project manager, a faithful friend, and a responsible pet mom. She deserved a future filled with the family she dreamed of, but her life was ended by the very thing she hoped would become her foundation: love. To Kayla's family, may your sorrow turn to strength, your heartbreak to action. She believed in dreams. Now let her story remind us all to protect them. Rest in peace, Kayla. What do you think about this? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.